Hey guys, welcome to this new video from Instinct Learning. Today I'm going to show you how to process your kick and bass line to make it sound fat and give it that extra oomph. And we're gonna start right into it. So first I will start with a 145 bass line just as a starter. So let's start from the beginning, okay? First, you take bassism or whatever kick tool you want to use. Then you draw in a MIDI file. You go inside the MIDI file and you draw in your 4 kicks. Once you have done that, we can directly go to the VB1 and draw 3/16 notes. Just take them all together and shorten them a little bit. Just press Ctrl and draw them back a little bit. Duplicate. So right off the bat, what you can do, let's mute this bass channel for now. We can turn the kick down a notch. So we're going to turn this down 8 decibel now. And now we can go to the bass line, okay? So let's go down 1 octave. Okay, so now you have your generic kick bass line going. Open up the mixer and just have a look at the levels. Okay, looks fine. The next thing what you would normally do is probably equalize. So as for many things in music production, there are many ways how to treat a bass line. I figured out a chain that works well for me, which consists out of EQ, compression, saturation, and various multi-band combinations of those. Let's take the FabFilter Pro Q2 for the bass line and cut it at 30 Hertz. And we also can cut the bass line 48 decibel per octave at around 5000 Hertz for now. So this is just a rudimentary low cut and high cut. And this is basically also up to your taste. You could also use it like this if you enjoy it more. The next thing that we are going to use is a saturation stage. We are using quadrafats to just give it a little bit more drive. I will not change anything right here, right now. You could, but I don't do that now. Then more equalizer. So I actually like those graphical EQs to clean up sounds a lot. What you want to have a look at in the bass line is certainly the low mids, like let's say from 160, 120 to 500 Hertz. So definitely cut a little bit of those frequencies out A lot of other instruments lie on that frequency, and it's not very necessary nor sexy in a bass line, in my opinion. So we can just filter some out of it. This equalizer is basically made for such cleanup operations, so it's a good way to go. But you could also, of course, use the FabFilter Pro Q2 to check if there is anything that you don't like and filter that out. Now, the next thing that we are going to do is multiband compression. I'm actually using the C6 for that. You could also use the C4 or any other multiband compressor, but I found that the C6 has a very, very nice sound to it and a nice processing. So I'm using that for bass lines a lot. Very slight compression, but it's also good to keep the frequencies in check. And you can also use it, of course, as I did here, to actually reduce some frequencies dynamically. Okay, so the next thing is we're going to have a look at the kick. So there are two ways that we could go with the kick. One way is to actually have a look at the internet, type into your search engine FRAC chart and just check which fundamental frequency is E, and then you could use that to tune the kick like that, but you can also use your ear. That's no problem. So as you can see here, you have the duration of the kick. I made another video that is available online that you can check on more details about how to create a kick in tune and also in the right length. But we're going with organic workflow today, and we just use it right now as it is, and I show you more about the processing that you can do. So let's say this would be a sample. Then you still would have to do some processing. So again, you have to clean up the kick. Okay, and once you're done with that, actually you could use it as it is, I guess. But first, let's check the levels. Okay, bass is up. Yeah. So what else could we do to the bass line? Well, once we are done, certainly what makes sense is to make a mono channel and send those two channels inside that mono channel. and then you're basically good to go to either further work on it. I mean, there are different other things that you could theoretically do, but those I find are the most essential ones. One other thing is certainly sidechain compression. This will be the last thing that I will show you now. You activate the sidechain compression, and then you go to the kick, you go to Sense, you go to sidechain, activate it and set it to about here half. And now I am going to use extreme threshold value to figure out my settings. And this is really as you like. You could do it, of course, a little bit more pumpy or a little bit less pumpy, more subtle or more aggressive. I think in slower tracks actually a heavy sidechain works well, and in faster tracks as well. Sometimes it really depends, but it's a very good technique to keep those two sounds a little bit more separated and to create space for the kick. Well, and once you're done with that, you're basically good to go to add on more other things like FX, percussions, hi-hats, leads, etc., and start to build up your story. But those are the basics. Saturation, equalization, compression, sidechain compression. I have to say that those things vary a little bit. For example, sometimes I will use this equalizer to boost some frequencies. For example, to give the kick a little bit shine. Or also some more punch in the lower spectrum. For example, at 100 Hertz, some kicks work very well if you raise 100 Hertz. Obviously the overall loudness will be bigger then, and you really have to see if it's worth it or not. In many occasions it's better to work with reducing frequencies instead of raising frequencies, but that doesn't have to say that you should never raise frequencies. There are really instances in which it's a good idea. Okay, that's it with this little lesson about kick and bass. I hope that I could help you with it, and see you in the next one. So now we have a look at the kick, a little bit more detail. So set your loop to 1 beat and go to bassism. And then what we want to do is go to the envelope. And here we can, for example, notch it like this to get rid of a certain aspect of frequencies. And this is possible since the kick is just a very fastly pitched sine wave. So if you go from left to right, from the beginning to the kick to the end, you have all kinds of frequencies in the middle, and if you reduce the amplitude of those frequencies, you effectively dynamically change the frequency of the kick, which has a pretty cool effect, and behaves a little bit different than EQ, for example. Another way to do that would be to use a compressor. You could achieve the same effect, again in a different way, so it's always worth checking that out, but have a listen to it. And now let's have a listen to it without. So you can hear the difference there. Definitely something you should have a look at, and most kick tools, for example Nicky Romero's kick VST, they feature various envelopes, so this is actually pretty simple. But Bassism is still an effective tool to get a kick fast in your track, and with the right equalization you can get a very fat kick in the end. So that's it with this video. See you in the next one. The next thing that we can have a look at is actually a different rhythm. For example, we could use triplets. So let's do that. The first thing that you have to do is set your loop to 1 beat. Go to the quantize and set it to 1/8 triplet and the length Q to quantize link. And then you just either draw them in, or you take some of your other bass notes and draw them in this place. And you will end up with this. So obviously you can vary those like that. Or whatever comes to your mind. You can also change in between straight and triplets. So and you can do different variations in that way. So then another variation of a psytrance bass line would be just simply one note. We know that from a particular style in Hamburg, for example, but I tend to use that for breaks or stuff like that. It's just good to know all those different kinds if you don't already know them. It's pretty basic knowledge, but if you don't know it, then you're missing something, so I thought I include that as well. That's it. See you in the next one. So the next technique that I'm going to show you is R-Bass, which is a bass enhancing tool that works with a psychoacoustic trick. And in this case, we have to check the frag chart if we don't know the frequencies. So our bass is at E, so that makes 41 Hertz. Let's go over here. So basically we have two choices to enhance the bassline. What it does is it takes the root, you set it to the root, for example 41 Hertz or 82 Hertz, and then, well, draw that one down a little bit, and then slowly start to fade it in and see what happens. it takes the bass frequency and applies basically harmonics on the higher points of the sound. If you want more details, you could just like press the little question mark here. You have a detailed description of what it does, but it basically makes the bass line more audible on more devices, for example, and just fattens it up. So let's have a look at it. As you can hear, it fills the whole thing up, and you could also try to set it to 41 Hertz. So it gives you more fatness in the lower regions, yeah, from 40 Hertz onwards, and fattens that up. It's a very, very useful tool if used correctly. And you should try it out, definitely. It's working for a lot of different bass sounds. Also, if you have, for example, a drum hit or something and you want to fatten it up, you could also use that. So, pretty good tool. Check that one out for sure. And yeah, see you in the next video. The next thing that we can have a look at is actually a different rhythm. For example, we could use triplets. So let's do that. The first thing that you have to do is set your loop to 1 beat. Go to the quantize and set it to 1/8 triplet and the length Q to quantize link. And then you just either draw them in or you take some of your other bass notes and draw them in this place. And you will end up with this. So obviously you can vary those like that. Or whatever comes to your mind, you can also change in between straight and triplets. So and you can do different variations in that way. So then another variation of a psytrance bass line would be just simply one note. We know that from a particular style in Hamburg, for example, but I tend to use that for breaks or stuff like that. It's just good to know all those different kinds if you don't already know them. It's pretty basic knowledge, but if you don't know it, then you're missing something. So I thought I include that as well. That's it. See you in the next one.